It's time for CityBeat, your source for all the latest news on the city of Thompson, only on 610 CHTM.
Hello and welcome to CityBeat. I'm your host, Jaret Schneider, and joining me today is City Manager Gary Ceppetelli. Good morning.
Morning, Jared.
So, before we get into any sorts of questions and things like that, I'll first, as always, give you the first minute to run things down from the past week.
Sure. And first of all, I'd like to sort of just send regrets for Mayor Johnson. He's attending an all-day session with the Kuwaitan Tribal Council in regards to racism and homelessness in the community. So that's an all-day session, and he sends his regrets for not being here today. Just really to make the public aware as to, obviously we're at the time of year now that the weather can change drastically from rain to snow and ice and whatnot. So just to sort of get the message out there to residents to sort of take caution when those weather systems do change, because they can cause slippery conditions in and around our city. The other thing as well, obviously that we have Halloween coming up, and as part of that, have been working with Manitoba Hydro to ensure that the street lights that are non-functioning now are up in operation. So I know that they've been diligent over the last month or so, doing a lot of capital works on their street lighting program. Have met with them, and so they are concentrating on certain areas where the lights are currently out now, that we do provide that safe environment for the kids on Halloween.
204-677-8181. Taking your calls to City Manager Gary Ceppetelli, 204-677-8181. And we'll get into some of the things like capital projects and then public works and some stuff as we move on. But first of all, on Monday night, we had the zoning bylaw for the supportive housing unit at City Council. And, maybe just first of all, talk a little bit about the unit. What are some of the things that it's going to do for the city? I know that we had a good public hearing and a lot of people turned out, and it was a quite long meeting, actually.
Right. And just to sort of start off first is, as you had mentioned, obviously with the zoning bylaw and the current zone that this property falls under is really in a commercial mixed use zone. In that zone, as all other zones, have a number of uses that are allowable in those zones as permitted and conditional. The one application obviously falls under the conditional use process, and that was the meeting that was held on Monday night. And really, it's a project that is being spearheaded by the Project Northern Doorway Committee, which committee really is a group of agencies that have come together to identify the highest risk needs of individuals in this community, and really trying to create another piece of the puzzle that to address the some of the addictions, mental health issues, and homelessness issues that we have in the city. So the project in itself will create 16 individual rooms for this clientele, and really offer them sort of that way out of some of the issues that they find themselves in.
204-677-8181. Now, I know I've got a couple of questions pertaining to the house itself through council. First of all, what would the living arrangements be like inside for both women and men? We know that there's going to be women and men both inside. So what are some of the arrangements going to be like that? Will we see some things like separate rooms, or how will they kind of be separated?
Yeah, it's my understanding, obviously that there will be 16 individual rooms. They will, so obviously that each individual will have their own room themselves. There'll also be a common area where they can congregate, and really the facility will be staffed 24/7, and really have the opportunity to give programming to these individuals so that they can move on with their lives. 204-677-8181. Now, I know that there was funding available for this, and it had a deadline of October 31st, and with the final decision now being pushed to the next City Council meeting, which is going to be early November, how is that sort of going to affect the funding, and has the date been extended for it? Yeah. So initially, and I'll just sort of get in regards to, obviously there were a couple of resolutions that were to deal with this on council on Monday night, but as a result of the length of the public hearing, the agenda for council was deferred until November the 4th. So those resolutions are still on the November 4th meeting. As you had indicated, obviously that the funding that was through the federal homeless partnering strategy sort of had identified a date. Since that meeting on Monday night, obviously that the group has been in contact with with Service Canada, which administers the homeless partnering strategy, and made them aware of the situation, and really that shouldn't impact the funding at all.
204-677 8181. Taking your calls to City Manager Gary Ceppetelli, 204-677-8181. Now, where can community members find maybe a full description of the project? Who are some of the partners and how the funding kind of breaks down and things like that?
Well, I know that through the Project Northern Doorway, and one of the agencies that are involved is John Donovan of AFM. I mean, really that he had initially put in the Thompson Citizen sort of a number of frequently asked questions and whatnot. So I mean, that was available and can be available through the Thompson Citizen. But I mean, if people do have questions, I mean, definitely to direct them to John Donovan at AFM, Paulette Simkin at Canadian Mental Health, who will really be the organization that operates the program on a day-to-day basis. From that aspect. So I would, if anybody has those questions, is to direct them to those individuals.
204-677-8181. Now, maybe we'll move into more some city questions now as city managers. The perfect opportunity to answer some of these questions, and we know we're moving things forward into winter. Unfortunately, sadly, we're going to see some snow and things like that. So how are things moving with some of the capital projects to this point?
Well, for the most part, our capital projects have all been completed, and the most recent one really, and I'd like to sort of express appreciation of the residents in around the Oxford Bay area for the pilot project that we were doing with a pipe bursting for a section of Oxford Bay, and really, so that has been completed now. All that remains really is sort of the rehabilitation, which will happen next year on the individual lawns of the properties, and to install the street lighting, which my understanding is to happen this week or early next week. So for that most part, that project has been finished. And as we had indicated at the start, I mean, obviously it was a pilot project as we move along our long-range plan to replace water mains throughout the whole community, as to looking at various technologies that are out there that we can utilize, that hopefully that will meet the needs of us as a city and our conditions that we operate under. So the next step as part of that project now is to sort of evaluate as to sort of what went right, what went wrong. Is it something that we can consider using in the long term? And as we go into our capital planning for 2014, those type of questions and analysis will be done, so that as we move forward, as to determine how do we continue on with the long-range replacement of the water mains system in this city.
204-677-8181. Now, you talked a little bit about some of the water mains. I know it's maybe a little bit early to speculate already, and there's only so many things you can do over the winter. Is there any upcoming plans for the new future throughout the winter, or anything maybe even for next summer that's kind of in the plans already that you look forward to?
Yeah, and we definitely, I mean, as part of our, whether it's water main renewal or street and sidewalk renewal, is that we are sort of operating on some studies that really have sort of assessed the condition of these infrastructure components, and based on those assessments is really sort of guides us as to sort of what the next project can be. I mean, obviously that now that we are with the implementation of the utility in 2011, gives us the opportunity to do a lot of that capital work as well, is now, which the city didn't have in the past. We were really just placing a Band-Aid on a break when it happened for the most part. So really now is that sort of marrying both the underground infrastructure and the surface infrastructure to ensure that when a project is done, is that we're doing them both at the same time, so that we're not going back, in future years to do other capital construction projects on those things. So yeah, we do have sort of ideas as to sort of what those next components are, both from a water main renewal and a surface infrastructure renewal, and those all will be presented in the next little while to council as we begin our budget deliberations for 2014, of which obviously the capital program is part of that. 204-677-8181. And we are moving into winter now. We know we have the final e-waste Saturday. I believe it's tomorrow. How are some of the things going with that, and Public Works as well to this point of the year? Sure. I think for the most part, things have been going very well. I mean, obviously our e-waste operates seasonally, usually from middle of May till this Saturday coming up, and really we'd like to get to the point where We offer residents of this city sort of year-round services on there. We are working with a number of the recyclers in the province, from e-waste to hazardous waste to oil reclamation and things of that sort, and really trying to come up with a plan, a long-range plan, where residents of this community can sort of have that ongoing sort of depots or drop-offs throughout the year, as opposed to only specific points of the year. So for the most part, I mean, we do get quite a volume of the electronic waste, which really diverts that waste to the landfill, which is the benefit of all of us as residents of this community. But unfortunately, it is seasonal at this point, and really, if people do get the electronic waste in the winter months, is hopefully that they store them and bring them to the waste once it opens up again in the spring.
And that'll pretty much wrap up the show for this week. But before we go, I'll, as always, give you the final minute to close things out for the week ahead.
Sure, and one of the things, I mean, obviously that people may have experienced. We do have some mechanical problems at the Norplex pool. People may have realized that the ambient air temperature is a little cooler than normal. I mean, obviously that we are trying to rectify that. We have to remember that, I mean, obviously that a lot of the systems in there are fairly old. I mean, with that facility coming online in the late 70s, so we do have challenges, and we recognize those challenges, but try to mitigate the operation so that it's really has minimal impact on the public that use that facility on an ongoing basis.
And that will do it for CityBeat this week. Make sure to tune in every Thursday at 11:30 for more insight into your municipal government and a chance to ask more questions. I would just like to thank City Manager Ceppetelli for joining us this week, and to everyone else, I hope you enjoy your Thursday.
CityBeat will be back next Thursday morning.